This is African American History is American History. Welcome. I'm your host, Harlan Kearsley. This program's goal is to foster understanding, promote discussion, and expand knowledge through stories of historical events, bios of unsung heroes, as well as timely and relevant news stories which will paint a vivid picture of the effects of segregation, discrimination, and bigotry on the lives of both blacks and whites. Comparisons will be made between the many racially fractured periods of American history and what's going on right now. Slavery was abolished just 150 years ago. Jim Crow only 50 years ago. Yet stop and frisk, voter ID, stand your ground, income inequality, and a host of other current problems are proof that their detrimental effects continue to be felt, and that the struggle for equal rights for all must continue. On the nights of June 21st and 22nd in 1964, three civil rights workers, James Earl Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, were shot at close range by members of the Mississippi Ku Klux Klan. Schwerner and Goodman, who were white, had each been shot once in the heart, but Chaney, a black man, had been beaten repeatedly and then shot 3 times. Many members of the Council of Federated Organizations, COFO, the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE, and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, were initially against bringing white supporters down from the North to share in the dangers of Mississippi. They felt that white volunteers would only increase the danger to local blacks because the presence of what many segregationists considered race traitors would only help to further enrage the Klan and other white supremacist groups. In 1965, John Lewis, then chairman of SNCC, felt that the white volunteers would actually help to strengthen the black communities by showing them that they were not alone, that there were people across the country, black and white, who were willing to risk the dangers and stand with them.
This is wrong. Here I am watching newsreel footage of civil rights marchers being beaten and killed in Alabama night after night from the comfort of my own living room. And all I can do is cry after every newscast.
That's Viola Liuzzo, a white woman from Michigan who believed so passionately in the fight for civil rights that, despite being a wife and mother of 5 children, helped organize Detroit protests, attended civil rights conferences, worked with the NAACP, and would eventually lose her life in the fight for equal rights for all. On March 25, 1965, she became the only white female protester to die in the civil rights movement. She was shot in the head by Klan members while giving a ride to a 19-year-old black man. One of the many civil rights marchers, she had driven around Selma during the 1965 Selma to Montgomery marches that took place in Alabama. Viola held to a strong desire to make a difference on as big a scale as she could. Another motivating influence on Viola's activism was her close friendship with NAACP member Sarah Evans. The two met in a grocery store where Viola worked as a cashier. They both shared similar views and support for the civil rights movement.
You want to go where?
Selma,
Yeah, I heard you. Have you lost your mind? Have you been watching the news? Alabama is a war zone. They're beating and killing Negroes left and right down there. Viola, your own people are going to accuse you of acting out of your place. And they won't forgive that.
Sarah.
Viola, I swear I wish there were more white people as sincerely dedicated as you. But I would hate myself if I didn't ask. Are you sure you know what you're getting yourself into? I mean, protesting at Wayne State is one thing, but fighting segregation down in the belly of the beast is just...
Sarah, there's too many white people sitting around talking, just talking, about how bad things are, about how unfair things are. But they're not doing anything about it. And many of these are good people, people who know right from wrong, who know how bad things are. They still just sit around and talk. Well, I can't do that, Sarah. And I agree with you. If there were more white people dedicated to this fight, it'd be a whole lot easier to gain equal rights for everybody.
But you're a wife, a mother. Hell, girl, you got 5 little ones at home.
This fight is for them as well. Look, I'm not crazy. I know how dangerous this is, but I have to be part of this. I already received my instructions. I'll be working with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, delivering aid to the different rest stops along the march route. And I'll be recruiting and driving the marchers and volunteers. Sarah, I'll be making a difference.
And making enemies. Listen to me. Every Klan member, every bigoted redneck, every fool with hate in his heart will target you. Even some Negroes will be skeptical of your intentions. You'll be hit with hate mail, phone threats, cross burnings, and maybe worse. Are you prepared for that?
Yes.
It's just too dangerous. You know what happened during the first march?
Yeah, I know. I should be afraid, but I'm not. I don't know why, but I'm just not. I believe in this fight. I have an opportunity to do something concrete with my life. Something historic. And the civil rights movement is that opportunity. You can't talk me out of this, Sarah. I'm going to Selma.
At that time, Selma, Alabama was seen as the epicenter of the civil rights movement. Oral history is the gathering of living people's first-person testimony of their own life experiences. Now, we all have stories to tell. You live long enough, you'll have volumes.
So I was appointed, and that's a matter of record, by the way. The first Negro appointed in Manhattan. That was June 28th, 1911. I was sworn into the New York City Police Department.
That's Samuel Jesse Battle. He's just one of many African Americans who've made major contributions to this country, and yet have become largely forgotten with the passage of time. Early in his career, Officer Battle was regularly pointed out by tour guides as New York's first colored policeman.
The day I was appointed, there was no problem, but as I left headquarters, the commissioner himself stopped me.
Officer Battle, I'd like to have a word with you.
Yes, sir.
I won't keep you, Battle. I just wanted to talk to you and tell you personally how very proud I am that you're a New York City policeman.
Thank you, sir. That's very kind of you to say so.
Not at all, not at all. I'm sure that there are more than a few people around here that are very glad that you're here. Now, I hope you know that there will be some difficulties at first, but I know you'll overcome them.
I'll do my best, sir.
Glad to hear it. But if any problems do arise, feel free to bring them to my attention.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, I've kept you long enough. Go home, Officer Battle. Go home and celebrate. Samuel Jesse Battle was born January 16th, 1883, in New Bern, North Carolina, to parents who were among the last generation born into slavery. Everything about Samuel was big. He had big hopes, big dreams. Why, even his very birth was big. Because at 16 pounds, Samuel quickly became noticeable in New Bern, earning the title of the biggest baby ever recorded in the state of North Carolina. But it was as a teenager that his need for bigger thrills got the better of him. One day, he was caught stealing cash from a safe belonging to his boss, a prominent landlord named R.H. Smith. Now, Smith wanted to press charges, claiming, "Mark my words, within a year, that young man will be in prison." And he might well have been, if it hadn't been for the fact that R.H. Smith was a friend of Samuel's father, a Methodist minister, who managed to talk him out of locking up his son. In a 1960 interview with Samuel Battle, conducted by the Columbia University Oral History Office, just 6 years before he died, Battle exclaimed,
"That was the turning point of my life. I said to my father, from this day on, I shall always be honest and honorable. And I'm going to make Mr. Smith out a liar."
On June 28, 1911, the 6'3", 285-pound, 28-year-old made good on his promise. Samuel Battle becomes the very first black person appointed to the New York City Police Force. In 1926, he would go on to become the first black sergeant. In 1935, the first black lieutenant. And in 1941, New York City's first black parole commissioner. If you were black and lived in the southern states during the Jim Crow era, you quickly learned that the whole separate but equal doctrine was anything but. Services, public facilities, public accommodations, housing, medical care, education, employment, and transportation for African Americans were all vastly inferior to those of white people. According to a recent Pew Research poll, nearly 9 in 10 African Americans say discrimination still exists. Black unemployment has remained at twice the level of white unemployment since 1972. Nearly 6 in 10 African Americans still live in segregated neighborhoods. Jim Crow was a legal way for whites to maintain their sense of privilege and dominance over people of color. These laws were sternly put in place to separate blacks and whites from even the slightest amount of contact.
My name is Barbara Pierce Cruz. I grew up in a working-class white neighborhood in Philadelphia in the early 60s. My elementary school was one of the first schools to experience busing. It never seemed like much of a big deal to us kids. I had white friends and I had black friends. But I later learned how controversial it was to the adults. I loved it. I got to be very good friends with many of the African-American girls who rode the bus with me. One year, we took a class trip to Washington, D.C. As little girls, we were very excited to be taking such a long trip. We were sitting on the bus, white and black together. We were chattering away without a care in the world. We were curious as to what we would see in the seat of our national government. About halfway to D.C., we stopped for a bathroom and snack break. To our surprise, we saw signs for white-only and colored-only bathrooms. Having never experienced this before, our little group of friends just ignored the signs and went to the bathroom. We were stopped by a worker.
Yeah, now, you can't go in there.
Why? Is it out of order?
No, it ain't out of order. It's only for colored folks. Now, this gal here can go in, but you can't.
But why?
'Cause that's the law.
A law about who can go to the bathroom?
That's right. Now, see over there? That's where you go.
He sternly directed us to the appropriate bathrooms. We were confused, sad, and angered by these laws. When we finally got to D.C., we were taught about our freedoms, our justice, and our rights. But we learned a bigger lesson about our rights at that rest stop. Apparently, some of us had more freedoms than others. When I got home, I told my mother about our trip. I told her about what had happened at the rest stop. Looking back on it now, I guess I just kept pestering her with questions. Mom, why couldn't my black friends use the same bathroom as me? No answer, so I asked again. Mom, why couldn't my black friends use the same bathroom as me? Still no answer. She was embarrassed and quickly changed the subject. I had never seen that look of shame on my mother before.
From 1876 to 1965, states throughout the South passed laws designed to prevent African Americans from improving their status and achieving equality. These statutes were known as Jim Crow laws, and they were strictly enforced.
The marriage of a white person with a Negro or mulatto or person who shall have 1/8 or more of Negro blood shall be unlawful and void. Mississippi, 1898.
The Corporate Commission is hereby vested with power to require telephone companies in the state of Oklahoma to maintain separate booths for white and colored patrons when there is a demand for such separate booths. Oklahoma, 1915.
All railroads carrying passengers in the state, other than street railroads, shall provide equal but separate accommodations for the white and colored races by providing 2 or more passenger cars for each passenger train, or by dividing the cars by a partition so as to secure separate accommodations. Tennessee, 1891.
No colored barber shall serve as a barber to white women or girls. Atlanta, Georgia, 1926.
All marriages between a white person and a Negro, or between a white person and a person of Negro descent to the third generation inclusive, are forever prohibited and shall be void. Maryland, 1918.
All marriages between a white person and a Negro, or between a white person and a person of Negro descent to the fourth generation inclusive, are hereby forever prohibited. Florida, 1919.
Any person presenting for public acceptance or general information arguments or suggestions in favor of social equality or of intermarriage between whites and Negroes shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and subject to a fine not exceeding $500 or imprisonment not exceeding 6 months, or both fine and imprisonment at the discretion of the court. Mississippi, 1920.
The officer in charge shall not bury or allow to be buried any colored persons upon grounds that a part or used for the burial of white persons. Georgia, 1902.
It shall be unlawful to conduct a restaurant or other place for the serving of food in the city at which white and colored people are served in the same room, unless such white and colored persons are effectually separated by a solid partition extending from the floor upward to a distance of 7 feet or higher, and unless a separate entrance to the street is provided. Alabama, 1927. My father, Hank M. Kearsley, is an artist and educator. At 86, his life spans in America entering World War II, the civil rights movements of the 1950s and 1960s, the Cultural Revolution of the 1970s, all the way to America's current uneasiness to come to grips with the fact that racism still exists. The social issues he tackles in his paintings, drawings, sculptures, and photographs are a direct result of personal experiences. Striking and intense are just two of the positive adjectives reviewers have used to describe Hank Kearsley's work. There is a hard truth to his art, a social vision that leaves the viewer both satisfied and wanting to know more, and that's the way he likes it. Here in his art studio, located in Newton Center, Massachusetts, just about 25 minutes from Boston, I spoke to him about his current series of paintings called The Black West. So what made you decide to do a series on the Black West?
I think I decided because I had been doing a number of paintings dealing with social injustice and slavery. And after doing some research on slavery, I found that there were a number of slaves, freed and unfreed slaves, who went out west to seek freedom, and many of them became cowboys. And not having known of this in schools and in the schools that I attended, I thought maybe I could educate some students and young people and adults that how important blacks were to the settling of the West, not so much as the movies portrayed only the John Wayne or Lone Ranger type of people. So I decided to interpret these people in paintings, mainly trying to show their strength on canvas in terms of their abilities to be sheriffs and marshals and horse trainers, etc.
And what kind of reaction did you get when you showed your work?
Reactions are kind of different from depending on the audiences, and I guess probably the most common reaction is the fact, well, I never knew about these people, I never heard of them, you know, and also that's coming from both people of color and Caucasian. They never heard of it because it certainly wasn't taught in schools. So this way they had a visual picture of what these people might look like and what they might have done. So it's kind of my interpretation of the Black West along with the storyline, you know.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the different paintings that you did. Let's start with, what do we have here? Bill Pickett. What can you tell me about that?
Bill Pickett was probably well known both to whites and blacks because this is more of a recent time. He was a bulldogger and went to rodeos and became quite famous. He would throw down bulls and be able to do it in record time. And along with people like Will Rogers and stuff like that, he was quite well known.
Most of these paintings are done in oil. Is there a reason that you did it in oil as opposed to any other medium, or is there any significance to it?
Well, most of the paintings started out as you know, I got ideas. I did little sketches and pencils and say in my sketchbook, and then put it on canvas and went to oils because these are colorful characters, and I think that they deserve the color of the paints to depict how prominent they were. The oils also led me to use the paints heavy and depict
the strength to it.
Yeah, depict strength and be able to change the color. Many of these cowboys and people in the Black West were of mixed race, and it was quite easy enough to change the colors to light or dark or the Native American kind of tone or whatever, you know. So it's very important that I could be able to do that, and also with the oils I can get sort of transparencies in the background of other cowboys in the background, so that it looked like even though there was a portrait of, say, one particular cowboy or person like Bill Pickett, I could in the background have a group of cowboys and horses or whatever that kind of fade into the background. So the fact that there wasn't just one or two cowboys, but there were many who went out west who tried to gain their freedom or some success or equality, I would guess.
Right. But only the few are known, like Bill Pickett and Nat Love.
Yeah, there are only a few well known. There are, of course, the few that we know of. There are, I guess, hundreds of others. I mean, when I went out to Oklahoma and found that there's a Black West Museum out there, and there are many cowboys who you never heard of. They were just, ordinary guys out there, but they were cowboys, and they had cattle and they had ranches and stuff like that,
Now, you said that the reaction to your work has been mostly positive. Have school children been to these galleries and seen these, or have teachers taken their students to the galleries specifically to view these paintings?
There have been some. I have gone to schools to talk about and show these paintings to students, younger students, and most of them were kind of excited about it. They didn't know about it. They asked many questions about who these people were, and so it still remains to be seen. There have not been a lot of schools that you can get into to show this work. There still is not that much interest in it, That's not part of the educational history that's being taught in schools.
Yeah. Stagecoach Mary Fields.
Yeah, Stagecoach Mary Fields was probably I guess, more well known because she was went out west and became a
She delivered, she was like with one of the, well, she was the first black woman to deliver the U.S. mail.
That's right. And of course, she was a big woman. She's weighed over 200 some odd pounds and very strong, very tough. So, and portraying her through paintings, I could take license and emphasize that she was very strong by making her hands very big and very strong, and that she has a tough demeanor by making her face strong and hard, and yet she had a lot of friends and she was well liked. Yeah. She also always carried a Smith & Wesson pistol, and she carried a shotgun. And she then became
she was
quite prominent.
Yeah, the emphasis on the hands in the painting.
Right.
I know you had told me once before that someone had asked why are her hands so big.
Yeah. Well, you think about her. If you read about her and you study about her, you realize how tough and strong she was, and there were many occasions where she would fight, so she had a laundry business for a while, and somebody failed to pay the bill, and she goes outside and she knocks the guy down, and so yeah, you have to emphasize that, and that comes about from way back. My paintings would deal with strength in some of the figures. Most of the paintings are figurative of people who work with their hands, and that's a very important thing. So I always kind of, at one point, unconsciously made the hands bigger, and people used to ask me about that, and I finally realized that I was doing that. So now I purposely do it if I want to show that kind of strength, The painter, artist John Wilson, he emphasized, he does paintings and sculptures of Martin Luther King, and he makes the head very, very large. His thing is that's where his knowledge and his intelligence came from. So he doesn't do the whole figure; he just does the head, but he makes that head very large, and that's the most important part. So that's basically why the hands. Many people are very important in my paintings.
Bass Reeves.
Yeah, Bass Reeves was a very important figure because he was a U.S. Marshal and I guess an imposing figure. He was, I guess, 6 feet or so tall and became quite a important marshal, very prominent, and was known for going out and using different disguises and capturing outlaws and being an impressive looking figure. And my thing with him was that the painting was to put him out there in the West. You can see the background areas are the buttes and things in the background, and the color of that you would see out in the West. The colors are appropriate for that, and try to just emphasize him against that background. No horses or anything like that, just zooming in on him, his features, and his strength in a way. There seemed to be a determination in his face or whatever. Not using a photograph of him or anything like that, just to get the sort of image, but my own interpretation of him as a person through painting.
My name is Priscilla Butler. I was born in Escambia County, Alabama, in 1909 on the old Clinton plantation. My mother was, well, it's the funniest thing. I can't find no record that she ever was born, or that I was ever born. I tried to trace it back when I got my Social Security. Well, I guess it might have been some mix-up or something. Because my mother, she was nothing but a child when I was born. I don't really know how old she was. See, everything I found out about her, I had to pick up in bits and pieces, you see, from what I heard and what my aunt told me when I was very small. I know that she would go wait on white people with new babies. She'd go wait on Miss whoever it was and send money back. Now, my mother felt it best that I be with my grandmother. I don't know why exactly, but it had to do with me being born out of wedlock and everyone knowing I was the child of one of those Clinton boys. They was the white people that owned the plantation. My mother never even told my aunt who my father was. I don't know why. We all didn't know for sure until my mother died. I was 9 years old then. Now, as I grew up, I noticed that there was a lot of mulattoes on that plantation, that the women's didn't dare accuse those Clinton boys. No, sir. After I was grown, I moved here to Mobile. I remember I was around 16 when I started working for this lady who had 2 daughters around my age. The years moved on and the mother died. I eventually started working for one of her daughters. I remember it weren't till 1965 that this woman finally invited me to have lunch with her. Now, you got to understand, this was when it first came that you could go in and sit down and eat restaurant food with white folks.
Priscilla, honey, over here. Thank you for coming, dear. Please, sit down.
Well, thank you, Miss Mimi.
Oh, pay no attention to their stares, Priscilla. I expect it will take some getting used to, you know, whites and coloreds, sitting down at the same table and all.
Yes, I expect it will.
I went ahead and ordered us some tea. Would you care for some?
Thank you, ma'am. That would be nice.
Allow me. There you are. My, you know, this is the first time I've ever served tea to a Negro. I think it went rather well, don't you?
You done real good, Miss Mimi.
Why, thank you. Well, my dear, dear Priscilla, you're no doubt wondering why on earth I asked you to meet me here. Well, I simply wanted to let you know just how much we all love and respect you, dear Priscilla.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Why, you've been with us so long, I...
Excuse me, Miss Mimi. Am I being let go?
Let go? Oh, heavens, no. What would we ever do without you? As I was saying, you have been with us for so long. Why, we practically grew up together. You raised my babies from the time they first came into this world. Oh, my dear Priscilla, you are much more than simply a housekeeper. Much more. You know, I simply cannot remember a time when you were not a part of our family. Let you go, really, Priscilla.
Oh, well, I thank you. Again, most kind.
Oh, Piffle, I'm only telling the truth. And I think it is simply wonderful that your grandson, Roland...
Robert.
Robert, yes, simply wonderful that Robert is helping you with your duties. He's certainly growing up to be quite a young man.
Yes, ma'am. He's been a mighty big help to his grandma. I sure care a whole heap for my Bobby.
As I do for my granddaughter, Amy.
Yeah, I expect so.
They're about the same age, you know.
Yes, ma'am. I reckon they are.
Priscilla, let me come to the point. Are you aware that your grandson and my granddaughter have struck up a friendship?
Oh. Well, that's nice.
Yes. I mean, no. I mean, apparently this has been going on for quite a while. Now, I don't believe that this is just a friendship. As a matter of fact, I have seen them on more than one occasion. Talking to each other. Now, once I even saw them laughing. Together. Laughing. Out loud.
They's just children, Miss Mimi. Children tend to laugh a lot. They ain't learned to be miserable yet.
Now, you see here, Priscilla, you and I sitting together in a restaurant is one thing. And I've always been for colored people sitting wherever they want to on the bus. I simply couldn't say so at the time on account of my standing in the community. You understand, but I...
Miss Mimi, you ain't never ridden a bus in your life. You always said you wouldn't be caught dead riding a bus.
Be that as it may, I have always felt that way. Why, I was for desegregation of our mass transportation system long before Reverend King and those free riders.
Freedom riders, Miss Mimi.
Oh, yes, of course. But anyway, Priscilla, this is different.
Different?
Yes. Oh, my goodness, Priscilla, you know it is.
Miss Mimi, they were just talking. Just two children talking.
And laughing. Don't forget that. And if they were still just children, I wouldn't even bring this up. But you know as well as I do, they are both growing up. Don't you see where this could lead? If it's not stopped right away, these things have a way of escalating. Next thing you know, miscegenation. Do you know what that word means, Priscilla?
Yes, Miss Mimi. I know what it means. It means...
race mixing. It means going against the word of God and race mixing. Now, Priscilla, I care about you, and Lord knows I have no hate in my heart whatsoever for your people. But I just couldn't have. I mean, I wouldn't want your grandson to... Oh, please don't hate me, but it's just...
You already have them children married off and living together. It's 'cause they laughed?
It's just wrong, and you know it.
Miss Mimi, you think I'm gonna sit here and tell you how wrong you are, don't you? You think I'm gonna give you a big old speech like them civil rights protesters do, Well, guess what, Miss Mimi? We both feel the same way. You don't want them together, and I don't either.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. I always said you were sensible.
But I'm gonna tell you something, Miss Mimi. Now, I don't know if my grandson and your granddaughter feels more for each other than just friendship, or if you just blowing this thing up to be more than it is. But I am gonna tell you something.
Priscilla, would you kindly lower your voice?
You and your sister have told me quite a few times about your feelings about colored people. I listened to it, and I listened to it. And you know what? I don't enjoy hearing it. Never did.
Priscilla, perhaps this is not the place to discuss it.
But as long as I'm working for you, I guess I gotta take it. But I'm gonna tell you something. Something about my hometown where I was raised up. There was a church there. Just one church that the white people go to. You go over there and you find nothing but white people. But now, there's Shiloh Baptist Church there, and there's St. Joseph's Methodist Church, and there's Holy Hill Church. That's 3 churches that the black people go to. And it's just as many people in those churches multiplied by 3 for that one white church. Now, when you walk into those churches, you'll find black people, brown people, tan ones, red ones. You keep on looking, you'll find ones as white as you is. And you know, a black man didn't do that. Well, what do we do? I'll tell you what we do, Miss Mimi. Accept it. For years and years, white people would kill black people for not accepting it. To tell you the truth, no one would like to see it all straightened out more than me. What would you say if I told you just how much white mixture I have in me?
But you always told me you were part Indian. You said...
I didn't tell you that. That's your mama said I was an Indian. Always going around saying that I was the prettiest little Red Creek Indian gal she ever saw. She said it, not me.
Well, if you knew you weren't an Indian, why on earth didn't you tell her?
I had no reason to tell her what I was. Wasn't none of her business. And I knew she wouldn't have wanted to know I had a white father. So I just let her go on believing what she wanted to.
My dear Lord.
Thank you for the tea, Miss Mimi. Lord, what a day that was. I swear. As white as Miss Mimi was, I do believe she turned a half a shade lighter. It was good to get that off my chest, though. Of course, I didn't stay working for Miss Mimi after that. No. She said that because of my racial deception, along with my unladylike outburst in the hotel dining room, which, of course, caused her some embarrassment in the community, she had no choice but to let me go. I guess having your black maid talk to you like that in public, what else could a high society white woman do? I don't think she'll ever live that down. But you know what? I don't care. I'm glad I said what I said. Now, as for my mother, I don't know what it was that caused the mingling up. I don't know if it was rape or lust or real affection between them. I don't know. Never talked to no one about it. And no one wanted to talk about such things. In my mother's case, I spent quite a lot of time, trying to know. But I just don't.
On behalf of everyone here at African American History is American History, thank you for listening. And remember, none of us can truly embrace the future until we first confront the past.